I interviewed many years ago the late Richard McHugh, who was a governor of Victoria and himself sat on the Victorian Supreme Court. And he had some interesting things to say to me about constitutions. He felt, for example, because he was very active, as you would know later, with the whole head of state question, and he felt very strongly that, to a large extent, yes, the Constitution needed to be left as it was. It was what he described as a very bare-bones type document, but he nevertheless felt there was a lot of room to move within it. You didn't need to necessarily change anything in that Constitution. But he said our founding fathers, such that you could call them that, he said were actually a lot more pragmatic than people gave them credit for. They didn't see the need to write in highfalutin language like they perhaps do in America. And so in that sense, he felt that there were other means and other avenues to go about exercising of people's rights and the like, and it wasn't the Constitution per se that needed the, I suppose, the fiddling with or whatever you might want to call it. Would that be a little bit like the way you're describing now?
Yes, well, I mean, the Constitution's really a blueprint for legislation, but of course it wasn't really concerned with rights. It was concerned with the allocation of power between the federal government and the state government. But as I said in a number of judgment, a lot of the terms in the Constitution are written at such a high level of generality that you can have a progressive interpretation. I mean, just take the word commerce. Think of all the things that are changed in terms of commerce, which obviously come within the power. I also expressed the view that a question may arise as to whether marriage now has the same meaning as it did in 1901, and as to whether it's now not wide enough to cover same-sex marriage. There's certainly scope for progressive interpretation, and I think I've played my part in terms of the freedom of communication doctrine. Cases of Longy and Coleman and Power and all those cases, yes. But John Toohey, in his Alice Springs speech, in effect suggested that somehow or other the common law was picked up by the Constitution. I hope I'm not doing a disservice, and that attracted a lot of criticism at the time. Bill Dean believed in the living Constitution, so which I didn't. I said we're bound by the views of people long since dead. So if you had to start again, there are a lot of things you wouldn't do, and I don't know, but I've given a number of lectures on bills of rights, which I think there should be a Bill of Rights, but that's not a view that's very popular in legislative circles and probably won't be in my lifetime. So.
I know in England, of course, with the Bill of Rights there, that's sometimes been described as the villain's charter.
Yes, yeah.
You'd be familiar with that?
Yes.
But did you think that would necessarily be the case here, should we ever finally get a Bill of Rights?
It'd be a villain's charter? No. No matter what attention Parliament gives to a social situation, there are always new problems arising that the legislation just doesn't deal with, or there's an overreaction to it. I'm a great believer in rules. The problem about rules is that they can be both over and under inclusive, really. So, but no, a lot depends on the judiciary how they go about interpreting a Bill of Rights.
So it's only ever going to be as good as the quality of our judiciary.
No doubt about that. You've only got to look at the history of the United States constitutional interpretation. Look at the history of the United States in, say, the Lochner area, when you had people like White and then Taft, and it wasn't until Hughes's switch, 1937, that you had a progressive interpretation of the Constitution. I mean, they knocked down child labour laws, workers' compensation statutes, and all. And then under Brennan, as the principal architect in the Warren Court, they really pushed the interpretation of the Constitution. Now you've had this swing back with the majority of Conservative justices on the Supreme Court. So,
it's a bit of a pendulum sort of situation, isn't it?
It is, and law tends to be like that generally. It's the same with the common law. And idea is developed, it's pushed to the extremes, then there's a reaction to it, and it comes back. I mean, the common law in modern times, the doctrine of negligent infliction of economic loss, which after Hedley Byrne had a great spurt on for a while, but it's been gradually pulled back.